Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for attending this webinar, Supporting the Whole Child, Advancing Social Emotional Learning in Massachusetts, co-sponsored by Transforming Education and the Rennie Center for Education, Research, and Policy. My name is Bob LaRocca. I am Director of Policy and Communications here at TransformEd. And before I run through our agenda, I'd like to introduce everybody who's participating in this webinar. In addition to myself, we are joined by Chad Dontremont, the Executive Director of the Rennie Center, Tara Bennett, Principal of Millbury Junior and Senior High School in Millbury, Massachusetts, Rochelle Engler Bennett, Associate Commissioner for Student and Family Support for the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, and Audrey Jackson, fifth grade teacher at the Manning Elementary School in Jamaica Plain and the 2016 Massachusetts Teacher of the Year. I'm going to start us off by discussing some of the research behind social emotional learning. I'll talk about the work of the core districts and their approach to SEL measurement, and I'll note some recent developments in the field. I'll then hand it over to Chad, who will provide some information and updates and some priorities that the Rennie Center has for their work on SEL here in Massachusetts. And then we'll have a discussion among Tara, Rochelle, and Audrey. We'll hear from them about the importance of SEL to their work and to students in Massachusetts, although I think this will be an enriching conversation for any educators who are interested in implementing SEL in their systems, schools, and classrooms. So let me start by providing some background on our organization. TransformEd is a nonprofit that is based in Boston, but works nationally, and we support school systems in assessing and developing students' social emotional skills. We do this by bridging the gap between the world of education, psychology, and neuroscience research with the world of education policy and practice. We work closely with school systems that want to act on research now to effectively serve students. So we have, for example, served as the strategic advisor to the core districts in California, helping them to roll out their unique accountability system that incorporates social emotional competencies. We also work with an amazing set of researchers around the country, helping us to translate key findings into practical guidance for education systems. Some of those researchers include Tom Kane and Marty West of Harvard, Camille Farrington of CCSR, Mark Brackett of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and Roger Weisberg of Castle, and others. I'm sure many of you are familiar with SEL, and that's why you're on this webinar, but we wanted to start with a definition to say what it is. So SEL is the building of intrapersonal and interpersonal competencies. Such competencies include, but are not limited to, things like self-management, which is the ability to regulate your actions and thoughts, growth mindset, the belief that your abilities can grow with effort, and social awareness, which is the ability to empathize with those around you and to take different perspectives. We often joke that this field is sort of like the Tower of Babel because there's a lot of different language that's used to describe interpersonal and interpersonal skills. At TransformEd, we use the acronym MESH, which stands for Mindsets, Essential Skills, and Habits. And we do this just because we want to highlight our belief that social emotional learning is more than just skills. But for the purposes of today's webinar, I will use the terms social emotional competencies and MESH interchangeably. So I mentioned that one of our key responsibilities is to disseminate key research in this field, and the research based on MESH is really compelling. We consistently see that these skills impact students' academic, career, and well-being outcomes. So for example, with respect to academics, teaching students learning mindsets, for example, has been shown to improve GPA and academic performance in core subjects like math and English. With respect to careers, stronger social emotional skills predict a greater likelihood of being employed. And with respect to lifelong well-being, individuals with strong MESH competency levels are less likely to struggle with obesity, smoking, substance abuse, and other mental health issues. If you're curious about some of the research here, we've summarized a lot of it in a recent paper that we've written called Ready to be Counted. You can see it, it's on the screen in front of you. It's available on our website, free to download. So beyond the research that says that SEL matters, what else do we know? We know from national survey data that 88% of educators say they're already implementing some program, practice, or intervention to build students' MESH. In front of you here is a quick snapshot of some of the many different approaches that schools are using to help develop students' SEL. I put them into different categories, but of course, these categories are not 100% distinct. There's some overlap here, but the point is that some schools are using discrete interventions like PERTS, which is out of Stanford, and this offers online resources and strategies to promote growth mindset. Some schools are using behavior tracking systems like PBIS, which focus on setting explicit expectations for students and then reinforcing positive behavior. There are teacher PD programs and teacher moves that focus on instructional approaches. So an example of this is the Greater Good Science Center, which is based in Berkeley, and they offer an online PD for educators. They put out a frequent publication, and they also have a summer institute on mindfulness. And then there are comprehensive programs which do a lot of these things, such as Second Step, Paths, and Ruler. These programs typically include curriculum for explicit instruction of MESH skills, along with resources for integrating MESH into academic classes, some professional development as well, and then there's sometimes even a school-wide community building component. We also know that as a nation, we're putting significant resources towards MESH. Schools are spending about $650 million a year on MESH-related curricula and instructional resources. And teachers are telling us that they're spending on average more than 4 hours a week on activities that are intended to build students' MESH. If we take those two buckets and we add them together, we come to a figure of about $30 billion a year that we're spending related to social emotional learning. We at Transform Ed are going to have more information about this, and it will be available in a forthcoming paper that we're putting out later on this spring. But why does this matter? It matters because while there are many great approaches, as I showed on the previous slide, the field has not yet come to a consensus about which practices work the best for certain groups of students, or how best to allocate resources to students who need them most. And one way to gain an understanding about this is to measure where students are with MESH. A group of districts that has begun to measure these skills and mindsets are the core districts in California. They are a group of 8 districts that serve over 1 million students in about 1,600 schools. And CORE, in case you didn't know, is the organization that fosters collaboration, innovation, and the sharing of best practices among those districts. You can see here from this map that the participating districts are LA, San Francisco, Oakland, Long Beach, Sacramento, and a few others. And what happened here is in 2013, superintendents from 6 of the core districts joined together because they wanted to create a new definition of school quality and student success with a particular focus on the whole child. The 6 districts eventually created a multi-metric data system that includes students' academic outcomes, which is 60% of the index and represented in gray on the left side of the graphic, as well as social emotional skills and school culture and climate, which represents the other 40% of the index and is represented on the right in green. What's important here is that these changes were led at the district level. Superintendents believed that a more holistic set of factors were very important for students, but also wanted to focus on building capacity, not using results for harshly punitive purposes against schools. So if we take a look at the green social, emotional, culture, climate bucket, we can see that CORE was used a bunch of different data and collected a bunch of data here. Some of this data they were already collecting, such as chronic absenteeism, suspension and expulsion rates, as well as culture and climate data. However, measuring social emotional skills, that was new, and it accounted for 8% of the overall score. In partnership with us at Transform Ed, and along with input from educators across participating districts, CORE prioritized 4 specific MESH competencies for inclusion within their index. As you can see here on the left side of this grid, these are the competencies that CORE wanted to focus on. I've already gone through the definitions of self-management, social awareness, and growth mindset, but they also wanted to measure self-efficacy, which is the belief in your ability to succeed in reaching a particular goal. After CORE collaboratively and thoughtfully prioritized these competencies, they needed to figure out how exactly they were going to measure them. So we provided some assistance here by speaking to experts in the field of social emotional assessment. We provided some advice on good measures. And then CORE ultimately decided to use student self-reports and teacher reports of students. So the grid in front of you shows a breakdown of how and where these self-reports and teacher reports were used. You can see that at the K through 4 level, the interpersonal skills of self-management and social awareness were measured through teacher reports. And then at the 5 through 12 grade levels, all 4 of the competencies were measured through student self-reports. And then additionally, by teacher reports for those 2 interpersonal skills, again, self-management and social awareness. Here are some sample items that are used from the self-management scale for students. And as you can see here, students were asked to evaluate some of their thoughts and actions over a previous 30-day period, such as how often they came to class prepared or how often they worked independently with focus. And you can see at the bottom here in the parentheses, the responses they could give were or are almost never, once in a while, sometimes, often, or almost all the time. So CORE piloted these measures and then they ran a field test of them in 2015 and they found very encouraging results. These self-reports were predictive of other student outcomes. So as you can see here with this chart, students who had stronger social emotional skills tended to have higher GPAs and test scores, and lower incidences of being suspended or missing school. So each one of the competencies is represented in a different color bar here. You can see how those competencies correlate positively with GPA, math scores, and ELA scores, and then negatively with days suspended and total absences. And importantly, all of these correlations held across subgroups. So how is CORE using this data? One way that they're using the data is to help address issues of equity. CORE is currently continuing to use both academic and SEL data to drive overall change and improvement, but they're constantly trying to approach this work through a lens of equity. So they break down the data by subgroup to identify and address any instances of disparity or disproportionality. In front of you here are a few areas that CORE has prioritized for improvement. And they're placing a heavy emphasis on improving math scores for African American and Latino students in grades 4 through 8. And one of the potential drivers that surfaced from the district level to improve math scores is integrating social emotional learning into math instruction itself. So this is just one example of how CORE is using their data system to focus on issues of equity, how they're being guided by district level input from stakeholders, and how they're using research that tells us that enhancing social emotional skills can contribute to improving academic outcomes. So one other development that has encouraged states like Massachusetts to adopt, refine, or deepen their work in this area is the federal Every Student Succeeds Act, also known as ESSA. And there are a couple of features here of the law that do relate to SEL that I'd like to mention you. The first is, broadly speaking, ESSA, unlike its predecessor, No Child Left Behind, it devolves more power to states and to local districts, providing them with the flexibility to expand the definition of student and school success. Throughout the law, there is a heavy emphasis that's placed on the use of evidence-based approaches. And ESSA establishes the opportunity to incorporate SEL measures into state systems, whether that's for purposes of accountability, for formative purposes, so in other words, ways that schools can identify areas of needed support, or for other public reporting. So given all of this movement recently around SEL, the growing research, the creation of new programs and interventions, the piloting of SEL measures, the redesigning of state systems due to ESSA, there's a lot that we don't know, but there's also a lot of opportunity to do a lot of work. And so here in front of you are a few pathways that we see as an organization to be engaged in advancing SEL. The first is we are continuing our partnership with the core districts to better understand emerging SEL data, particularly with regard to equity, as I had mentioned. And we're there to support district leadership in those districts that is pursuing SEL interventions. We're also collaborating with a Massachusetts organization called Excel, which is a coalition of organizations aiming to promote SEL in the Commonwealth. I'm gonna let Tara talk more about this, but I think it's exciting and very encouraging that 5 different associations that represent principals, superintendents, school committees, ed collaboratives, and administrators are coming together for this common purpose. Transform Ed is proud to be a part of that, and Rennie Center is also taking a leadership role in that as well. We're building partnerships with districts nationwide also, including Holyoke here in Massachusetts, to develop district-based action plans for SEL. And we're working with states and organizations to explore policy levers and initiatives that can address SEL, whether that's through culture and climate surveys or other formative assessments. Okay, so before I hand it over to Chad, I just would like to note that we do have a weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to on our website, on our homepage. It provides updates on SEL, whether that's through research or in popular press, as well as upcoming events. We do have educator resources and toolkits that are available for you to download that relate specifically to these competencies that I had mentioned. And we also make our papers, whether they're policy-based or otherwise, downloadable and free and available on our website. All of this can be found at transformingeducation.org. If you're on Twitter, please follow us at transforming_ed. And if you have any questions or comments about SEL or about this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is here. I'll put it up again at the very end, bob@transformingeducation.org. And so with that, I am going to hand it over to Chad to talk about the work of the Rennie Center.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bob. And welcome, everyone. I am delighted to join the conversation. As noted, my name is Chad Ramat. I'm the Executive Director of the Rennie Center for Education Research and Policy. We are an independent, nonprofit organization primarily focused on Massachusetts. Our mission is to ensure education decision-making is based on deep knowledge and evidence of effective policymaking and practice. We serve this mission in 3 primary ways. First, we produce an annual report on the condition of education in Massachusetts to assess progress and opportunities for improvement. We track 25 indicators from birth through adulthood and offer policy recommendations for the year ahead. Second, we conduct original fieldwork to better understand pressing educational issues and the potential impact of recommended reforms. And third, we work to ensure new evidence and information is in the hands of key decision makers. We currently work directly with more than 30 Massachusetts school districts to build local capacity to leverage research in the design, implementation, and evaluation of reforms. One of the Rennie Center's key areas of focus is social emotional learning. In 2015, we released the report, Social Emotional Learning, Opportunities for Massachusetts, Lessons for the Nation, in collaboration with ASCD, where we conducted a national scan of SEL policies and considered key strategies for strengthening SEL in Massachusetts. Although I do believe these recommendations are applicable to all settings. As Bob has made clear, we quickly confirmed what we already knew, that there is a lot going on to advance SEL across the country. There were a plethora of terms, definitions, and ideas on how best to support student development outside of academic learning. Multiple initiatives, such as California's core districts, present models on how to better support and assess SEL. And a number of states, including Massachusetts, have begun to develop policies, guidelines, and templates to support local leaders and educators in developing the whole child. However, as this field continues to grow and evolve, it can be difficult to know how to get started or how to further ongoing work. What are the key strategies to pursue to introduce or augment SEL in local learning communities? In the next couple of minutes, I hope to build a bridge between the evidence and ideas that Bob shared and the expertise of our panelists, who can provide specific examples of reforms that are occurring at the state, district, and classroom level. However, before we discuss how to move forward, I think it's important to reflect on where we've been. Bob, you can advance to the next slide. In Massachusetts, this means reflecting on the Education Reform Act of 1993. This law, along with Massachusetts' highly educated populace, is largely credited with putting the state on a pathway to emerge as a national leader in public education. The state now routinely scores first on the National Assessment of Educational Progress and is highly competitive on international assessments. As illustrated on the slide, the 93 law introduced a system of standards, assessments, and accountability that created a foundation for high expectations and rigorous learning on which to build an effective education system. At the same time, in the more than 2 decades that have passed, we have come to learn that too many of our students continue to struggle. Next slide. Massachusetts also has one of the largest achievement gaps in the country. The 93 law was largely envisioned as a K-12 initiative, but we now understand that learning begins at birth and extends through adulthood, and our policy should reflect this understanding. The 93 law is also principally focused on academics, neglecting the full range of students' developmental needs that are critical to keep them engaged in school and persisting along college and career pathways to enhance their likelihood of life success. It is time to consider an expanded approach to defining education success. Next slide. This means understanding that excellence and equity in education present a false dichotomy. The way forward for reform is to realize that these goals are not separate and distinct, but rather the inevitable result of attending to the needs of the whole child. Next slide. So again, how do we get started? As I mentioned before, the Rennie Center conducted research to better understand how states and school districts can better support social emotional learning. This work included a national scan of state policies and initiatives and in-depth case studies of Massachusetts school districts pursuing promising practices. We reached 4 conclusions for moving forward. Next slide. First, we must prioritize social emotional learning. There is a need for a common language and understanding of SEL and clarity on who is responsible for it. There is absolutely broad agreement that SEL is important, but varying definitions, goals, and practices cause confusion. In 44 states, SEL is not independently prioritized, but rather integrated into other work, such as through health standards, codes of conduct, and school climate assessments. The adaptability of SEL is a strength, showing that it is compatible with other education priorities. But a lack of dedicated focus can hinder work. Second, we must build operations to support SEL. Supporters of SEL have frequently advocated for freestanding standards to signify a statewide emphasis on SEL. For example, Kansas is one of the few states with separate SEL standards called the Social, Emotional, and Character Development Standards. However, simply adopting standards isn't enough to ensure changes in practice. States can aid this process by coordinating work across districts, centralizing resources, and securing and allocating funding. Third, SEL must be integrated into academic learning. Here, district and school leaders are key. They must understand that social emotional learning is not something to be added onto an academic curriculum, but something that can enhance academic learning. Professional development is necessary to support educators in developing new practices. Schools that successfully support SEL have often relied on trainers and coaches to facilitate these changes. And access to tools and research on best practices is important to guiding decision-making. And fourth, we need to monitor and evaluate progress. If we are asking districts, schools, and classroom teachers to take on new practices, we need to understand what works and what doesn't, and support educators and students in this process. Ultimately, some level of assessment and accountability is likely important to helping prioritize and understand social and emotional learning. But we are still learning how to measure non-academic skills, and the immediate focus should be on collecting and analyzing data to drive improvements. On the next slide, we present a blueprint that was included in the Rennie Center's research report that can be used to help district and school leaders assess how to prioritize and operationalize SEL, integrate new practices with academics, and monitor and evaluate outcomes. This slide presents just a sampling of one of the pages from the report. I believe the blueprint is applicable to both Massachusetts contexts and other states, and the Rennie Center would welcome questions and the opportunity to support communities in its use. The Rennie Center's report on SEL and a subsequent action guide also offers policy recommendations to embed SEL throughout our entire education system, from birth through adulthood. And in the remaining slides, I would just like to reflect on those recommendations to tee up our panel discussion. Next slide. At the early childhood level, we need to set social and emotional learning as a foundation for school readiness. This means developing learning standards, assessing readiness across all domains, supporting greater family collaboration, and establishing a seamless, sustainable funding stream. This work is already happening in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where the Birth to Grade 3 Alignment Partnership is an unprecedented collaboration among educators and community agencies with a stake in early childhood. As many as 26% of New Bedford children enter kindergarten without any preschool or formal childcare experience, an issue that has a huge ripple effect for individual students in the system. The Birth to 3 partnership includes public preschool educators, community-based providers, and representatives from public housing, mental health, libraries, arts organizations, and others to engage in conversations about how to develop a shared focus on social emotional skills and needs so children enter school ready to learn. Next slide. Within K-12, it is important to build a comprehensive social and emotional support system. This means addressing school climate and discipline, developing tiered systems of support, developing individual student learning plans to help give students agency in seeking out learning that aligns with their needs and interests and shows clear pathways to post-secondary success, and supporting the use of a broader set of student data. As an example, Newton, Massachusetts has led its public schools in establishing the Department of Social Emotional Learning to place SEL on par with academics as a district priority. And it has ramped up trainings for teachers and administrators in social emotional learning practices. Next slide. And finally, at the higher education level, social emotional learning should lead to personalized pathways for college and career readiness. This means an integrated skill-based SEL curriculum for helping to determine college and career preparedness, a focus on competency-based outcomes, the provision of early college programming where high school students can be duly enrolled in high school level courses and college credit-bearing courses, and promoting work-based learning and career exploration. An example here is LEAP for Education, located on Massachusetts North Shore and focused on improving college and career outcomes for low-income youth. LEAP operates a range of skills-rich in-school and out-of-school programs and focuses heavily on social emotional skills, helping students explore their strengths, interests, and passions, while connecting them with social service providers and providing workshops on topics like stress management, time management, goal setting, and healthy relationships has helped lead to greater post-secondary success. These are promising examples of SEL, much like the examples Bob provided about the core districts in California. But they also illustrate that these practices are not yet achieving scale. The next step is to figure out how to connect the dots, across these learning opportunities to think about broad strategies that are statewide or even found across the entire country. As Bob alluded to, in Massachusetts, one example of this is the emerging Excel network, where administrator groups from across the state have come together to hopefully connect districts, emphasizing and prioritizing social emotional learning to learn from one another and build a richer policy agenda. Rennie Center, like Transforming Ed, and another organization, Teachers 21, is delighted to be supporting this work and hope to see it grow as we move forward. With that said, I look forward to hearing what our panelists have to share about what is occurring at the state, school, and classroom levels, and thank everyone for their time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Chad. It's great to hear. I think it's exciting to see all the work that Rennie Center is doing. Certainly a lot of overlap between what we were saying and what you guys are doing, so I think that's great. I would now like to turn to our panel, Tara Bennett, Rochelle Engler-Bennett, and Audrey Jackson. And just a reminder to our panel, please unmute yourselves so that you can now participate. And Tara, I would like to start with you. As principal, Tara, of Middlebury Junior and Senior High School, what are your thoughts about how school leadership can help to support both educators and students in developing SEL skills and mindsets?
Hi, Bob. Thank you very much for having me as part of a panel this afternoon on this very important topic with SEL. And as both you and Chab had already communicated and reiterated, there are so many aspects to SEL and so many definitions, and especially, we can look at common definitions, but at the same point, we need to recognize that each school, each district, each community is in and around itself its own and needs to be personalized and make those connections to support social emotional learning that works and fits best for them. And I think as we're moving forward and there's been more awareness with SEL, and especially here in Massachusetts, we've really had a growth as we've, at the principal level, at both the secondary as well as the elementary, we've connected with school committee associations as well as the superintendents associations. And so I think there's a commitment by leadership at so many different levels to find this support and to make this support work. But again, this support is very personalized, and we've had some districts that have done really great and have implemented many of the items that Chad has indicated in terms of programming, and we've also had many districts that are right now just kind of figuring it out themselves, because here we've been overwhelmed to some degree with all of the needs of our students and staff to support them in social emotional needs. And as a leader, I think what needs to happen is for people to come to an understanding of what's going to work for their district and what's going to make a difference. And for me, it's a culture. You talk so much, there are a lot of tangible items that could happen. For me, I think of this as a leader of how do I build my culture to support the social emotional learning. And with that, it's finding a common language, it's understanding cultural proficiency. And I think through those aspects, all of the areas that we talk about in terms of understanding empathy and grit and growth mindset, social awareness, all those pieces will come together if leaders are able to find that culture and build that culture that works for them, specifically in their building and again within their district. And I think that continuity within the district is vital as well, that we're having not just from kindergarten but pre-K. We're having the conversations and having that awareness as soon as these children in our community are coming into our buildings. We see them for such a short period of time, but it's also a very impactful period of time that we have our students. And so as we move forward as leaders, it's important to find that common language and find that common vision. And again, just figure out what's going to work for us, because a program that works. California may not fit exactly in Massachusetts, but maybe bits and pieces of it and ideas or activities can certainly help promote social emotional learning.
Thanks, Tara. I think there's a number of really important points you made there, particularly around personalizing it to the district and trying to forge a culture that responds to the needs and the interests of the district. And then I think the other thing that you said, that really having a strong commitment by leadership to do that is really important too. So I think those are really great points. Can you talk also a little bit about this new organization, Excel, and
Sure.
of which you're a member, and how this collaborative is working to support SEL statewide in Massachusetts?
Absolutely. So the Excel Coalition, which Chad and the Rennie Center is part of, fortunately, came about as part of the MSSAA, which is the Massachusetts Secondary School Administrators Association. We have focal points. I'm the past president. So last year, my focus was continuing the work that my previous predecessor, Dana Brown, previous principal in Malden, had started in regards to bringing an increased awareness of social and emotional learning to the table. Again, we can bring in stats about the number of times where we're dealing with interventions to support our students in the schools at so many different levels. And so as a continued vision and continued focal point from the state association became stronger, it just seemed that in order to move this awareness forward, we needed to we talk about being on the same page in the district. Well, you need to be on the same page as your superintendent. And so it was a reach out to the Superintendents Association, and wouldn't you know it, they were having the same and similar conversations that principals were having. And so it just was kind of seemed like a perfect marriage, in the sense that then we had the elementary principals that, again, dealing with situations in the trenches, having the same conversation. And then it just made sense with school committee, because that's where you're bringing in the community pieces and their communications that they consistently have with the superintendents. It just merged nicely that we all had the same focal point. And so as a result, we brought the voices to the table representing the different associations. And then you had the Rennie report that was released, and it just tagged right into everything that we were talking about at the table. So again, Rennie came in, and then Teachers 21 with John Doria came in, and then we have collaboratives, and it just was a blooming flower that was very exciting, but just at the same point a little scary, because there was so much need, as we all found out, that then it's how do you actually filter it so that we're making impact and not and being efficient, and not going in directions that didn't make sense. So that's as a result, we had the Excel Coalition. Excel is excellence in social emotional learning, and we are having ongoing dialogues. And at this point, we're focusing on supporting the need and the increased awareness of social emotional learning throughout the Commonwealth, and that we want to highlight that there are resources in different areas. We're not a financial resource by any means, but we're more of that commitment to bringing social emotional learning to the forefront and an increased awareness. And as our conversation strengthened, we made connection with the state and with the Department of Education. And, so then having those parallel conversations so that the work that we were doing, they understood where we were coming from. Again, not necessarily thinking about bringing in mandates or bringing in information into, well, you have to do this or you have to do that. For us, the idea is just more of an awareness and what can we do to support our students and our staff with, again, different activities or the common language and just an understanding of what the needs are.
Tara and Bob, just a quick note. I put a link to Excel Mass in the chat box, and I'd encourage even folks outside of Massachusetts to check it out, because it's a great example of the strong local leadership that Tara described.
Great,
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. And I was actually just about to say that too. And Tara, I think one key point from what you're saying is that it's obvious that SEL matters to all students, right? I think that's one of the interesting things about seeing all of these organizations come together. It matters to all students at all levels. It's critical to their success. So Transforming Ed is excited to be a part of that partnership too, and we think that that's going to be a lot of great work going forward for Massachusetts. So at this point, I'd like to turn to Rochelle, who is from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. And Rochelle, I'd like to ask you, Massachusetts has a long tradition, I think, of being an education leader and a model for other systems. Why in particular do you think the department is making efforts to prioritize SEL right now?
Hi, everyone. My apologies that the video isn't working. But that's an interesting question. You're right. Massachusetts does receive a great deal of recognition for our educational system, including for strong student support, student performance on national and international assessments. And we were recently ranked first in Education Week's Quality Counts edition, and even listed as the best state to live in by U.S. News and World Report, with a strong education system cited among the factors. That said, preparing all students for success after high school remains our top priority. And Bob, as you noted, as did others, social emotional competencies are essential ingredients to success in post-secondary education and employment and in civic participation. And also, as Chad mentioned, while we're making progress, we have equity and proficiency and opportunity gaps that persist. And we believe, and research has shown, that academic and social emotional competencies are mutually reinforcing, and that including a focus on social and emotional competencies for students and staff can offer a key lever in addressing these gaps. I think there are several additional why now factors that I'll mention. One is the call from the field, as Tara was mentioning, in terms of Excel and sort of the multitude of organizations and principals and teachers and administrators and others who are saying, please, department, pay attention and support this work. I mean, we hear a number of themes. I think we hear about the need for balancing and integrating a focus on social emotional competencies along with core academics, particularly in sort of the era of increased accountability that Chad was speaking to. We also hear about increasing numbers of students and communities across the state struggling with a wide variety of stressors, ranging from anxiety or substance use pressures or bullying behaviors to trauma, hunger, homelessness, and more. So this is a topic that can hit home everywhere. We've also heard that staff and administrators don't always feel adequately trained or prepared to help students develop these competencies, and also need help and support to further develop their own social emotional competencies. I think two more why now factors. One is the research that you've spoken to earlier on this webinar that speaks to the benefits of social emotional learning. And then the last why now factor I'll mention, I think, relates to direction from the state's definition of safe and supportive schools. That's part of the Safe and Supportive Schools Framework Law, which is Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 69, Section 1P. So among other things, that definition emphasizes that safe and supportive schools enable students to develop social emotional competencies and improve educational outcomes for all students, and that safe and supportive schools integrate services and align initiatives that promote students' behavioral health, including social emotional learning and other initiatives. So
Great.
Those are a number of factors that I think are at play.
Yeah, and I think an important, obviously there's not just one factor, right? As you said, there's many. It's the research, it's the demand from the field. It's also the demand. I thought was interesting that that we hadn't touched upon yet was sort of the demand from educators to get some specific assistance in this area. So it seems like there's a lot of things coming together to push this, including that safe and supportive schools law that you mentioned too. So then, Rochelle, can you talk to us a little bit about the ways in which social emotional learning is being incorporated into the department's strategic priorities?
Absolutely. I'll give a very, very sort of brief history and then give some examples of sort of current efforts underway. So a few years ago, when our race to the top work was ending, the department's senior leadership and board revisited our strategic priorities and added a fifth one that included a specific focus on social emotional learning. And then in April of last year, we held a special board meeting focused on social emotional learning to help inform the department and the board about the value and the potential for social emotional learning. And that included a panel presentation in which Transforming Education and the Rennie Center and other researchers and educational practitioners participated. Soon after that, we were accepted to participate in the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning's Collaborating States Initiative, and we began to revisit our strategic priority related to social emotional learning and to refine it, and we renamed it Supporting Social Emotional Learning, Health, and Safety. Now, all of our core strategies have a symbol to represent them, and this particular one is the heart. And the primary goal of our heart strategy is to promote systems and strategies that foster safe, positive, healthy, culturally competent, and inclusive learning environments that address students' varied needs and improve educational outcomes for all. And this goal is rooted in the definition of safe and supportive schools that I mentioned earlier. And in support of this goal, the strategy has 4 interrelated areas of focus, one of which is specifically developing social and emotional competencies. The other 3 are focused on school climate and culture, health, wellness and safety, and family engagement. For the focused area on social emotional competencies, I'll offer just a few examples of efforts underway. As I mentioned, Massachusetts was selected to participate in CASEL's Collaborating States Initiative, and that effort helps support states taking on what will meet the needs for our particular states related to developing policies or learning standards or goals or guidelines. And in Massachusetts, we're approaching this work with the aim of integrating guidance and supports into existing initiatives and into revisions of high leverage documents wherever appropriate. So as a few examples, in the recently posted draft revisions to our English language arts and mathematics curriculum frameworks, there were 2 guiding principles, one in each one, that will be voted upon by the board likely later this month, but they explicitly indicate that an effective English language arts and literacy curriculum and an effective mathematics curriculum promotes social emotional learning based on the premise that this can help increase academic achievement, improve attitudes and behaviors, decrease negative behaviors, reduce emotional distress, like was talked about earlier in the webinar. And additionally, another component of the Collaborating States Initiative focus in Massachusetts is updating our guidelines on implementing social emotional curriculum. We also did create a web page where we can sort of expand it over time and add resources, but we intentionally housed it on our curriculum and instruction site. And the idea is that social emotional learning is something that all educators can pay attention to and can help promote and support in collaboration with support personnel, in collaboration with school and district-wide policies, in collaboration with students and families and school committees, but that all are essential in the work.
Great. Thank you so much, Rochelle. And there's a lot that I'd want to follow up on there, but we are running a little bit low on time, and I'd like to get to Audrey here. Audrey, a 5th grade teacher at the Manning School in Jamaica Plain. Audrey, can you talk a little bit about how SEL can be implemented in the classroom and school level, please?
Sure. And you can hear me, right, Bob?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I, first of all, just want to say thanks for having me. And it's great to hear everything Rochelle is sharing, because Massachusetts has worked really hard to integrate social emotional learning into academics across the whole state. And it's something that we've been working on at my school for some time. So I work at the Manning School in Boston. It's a small K-5 school. And since we have taken a real approach to fully integrate our social emotional learning into academics and to shift as a school to have that as part of our focus, we've gone from a school identified as struggling for academic performance to making consistent progress on closing achievement gaps and raising academic achievement for all students. What this looks like at the school level specifically, there are sort of three things that I'd like to mention. One is that I think it's really important as you're creating your school plan and classroom plan is to base first steps on current capacity. So staff knowledge and understanding, awareness, and student capacity as well. So as I think Tara mentioned before, you don't want to necessarily start with a one-size-fits-all approach. It should be evidence-based, but really looking at what are the needs of the school to begin with, and then aligning that work to a common shared vision. So for example, what we worked on in year one for social emotional learning at our school was a lot of the basics around the core competencies, establishing shared vocabulary use, understanding what things would be done at the school level versus the classroom level, and just building a base, like a foundation of common terms, understanding, and shared vision in the initial year. What that looks like now in year 8 is really different. So we have much more fine-tuned, nuanced sets of programs. We actually use at least 5 different programs to really piece together what this looks like from pre-K all the way up to 5th grade. The second thing I think that's really important that I won't go into too much because everyone else has done a great job touching on it, is how important it is to integrate social emotional learning into academics. What we feel and our emotional sort of status is deeply tied to motivation, our attention networks, and our likelihood for retention. So learning is really a social process. Even when we're doing it in isolation, we're engaging with ideas and other humans' ideas. And so it's important for social emotional learning not to be perceived by students or staff as this like separate other entity. And then the third thing is really to be responsive and reflective based on how kids respond and what teachers' needs are. So what we work on in 5th grade is going to have evolved over time as our students built capacity year to year. And my strength might be something different from the 2nd grade teacher, but we really want to keep paying attention to where our strengths and weaknesses are, what other supports we might need, and where the kids may not be responding as we are hoping, and adjusting from there.
Great, thank you very much, Audrey. I think important there, one of the key things is having school as a whole, especially school leadership, recognize that this SEL shouldn't be just an add-on or an extra thing. I think that's an important point that you're making there. So one other question for you, you had the opportunity to be a part of the negotiated rulemaking panel for ESSA, so that federal education law that I had just mentioned in my presentation. And could you share with us what you learned from that experience as it relates to SEL and to your work?
Sure. So first of all, I learned a lot about how law and policy work. So the basics are, just for people listening, the statute was agreed upon by Congress, agreed upon at the federal level, and then regulations around Title I, Part A, which was what our panel was working on specifically. And with regard to SEL, there are 2 major things that I think are important for people to be aware of. I'm sure there are more, but 2 that I'll speak to now. One is the identification of at least 3 new subgroups that states and school LEAs and SEAs will need to report on with regard to academic progress on state level assessments. So those 3 new subgroups are students who have been identified as having homeless status, so kids And states may adjust their definition of this a little bit. There is an established thing in statute, but it is kids who have been homeless recently or who are currently homeless. Kids in foster care, which may also include kids who are in residential care or something very similar to foster care, and kids with parents who are active duty military. And I think that being aware of these new subgroups are really important because they are kids who maybe have extra stresses, trauma, or pressures on them. And it doesn't mean that these are only kids who have dealt with trauma or stress benefit from social emotional learning, but these kids in particular really benefit from having extra supports at the district, school, and classroom level to ensure that they're really emotionally supported and ready to engage with the learning. So the second thing is that there are a lot of there are some continued from No Child Left Behind, but also some new opportunities for SEL funding that are built into the law. A great place to look for that I can send along to you is if you just Google ASCD and SEL funding for ESSA. They have a great breakdown of each section of the law and different funding opportunities so that as people come up with ideas on how to integrate SEL at the district, school, or classroom level, that they're also aware of funding opportunities that come along with it.
Great, thank you, Audrey. I think I think a lot of us didn't, or I know that it's important to highlight the new distinctions or the new breakdowns among different student groups, particularly among homeless students, foster care students, and students in military families. And I think we are honored as Massachusetts residents to have you down there representing us as part of the rulemaking panel. So we are almost out of time, but I do want to get to one question. And again, thank you to all of our panelists. One question that we didn't talk much about here, but because we don't have a superintendent on the panel, but I'll pose this to the panel, and any one of you can feel free to take it. Someone asks, how do superintendents support building administrators to implement SEL? So I talked a little bit about the work of the core districts and the superintendents there, but I'm curious to hear from any of you your thoughts about certain things that superintendents could take. We know that the association representing superintendents is part of this Excel organization, this coalition, but I'm curious any thoughts that the panel might have in our waning minute or two left here.
Well, Bob, this is Chad. I can mention two things while people are thinking. One is I would refer people to the blueprint that I mentioned in the Rennie Center research report. There is a set of questions that run, as we mentioned, from prioritizing to operationalizing to integrating to evaluating that are designed with superintendents and school leaders in mind. So it gives them a series of questions to think about how to engage the topic. You know, the other thing I think that is important is recognizing the roles that people play within our school systems, that superintendents are in a great position through a bully pulpit to raise awareness around the issue, to think about including social emotional learning in strategic planning activities and setting broad parameters for advancing it throughout their district, while at the same time remembering that empowering school leaders and educators in schools to drive programming the way Audrey described will help lead to effective implementation.
Great, thank you, Chad. And I believe, Tara, you wanted to contribute something here too as well.
Absolutely. Chad brought up some really great points there, as did, you know, both Rochelle and Aubrey as well. And so my 2 cents with this is, I think just even the fact that we're having the conversations at the table is a way to support. And Chad, you know, you're certainly right in the sense of going broad spectrum and finding that support and allowing the building principals or the building leadership team to figure out again what's going to work for them. So I think putting this to the forefront, and though maybe it's not for this coming year, but for the upcoming years, maybe it becomes more part of the strategic plan or the building plans, improvement plans. But again, you know, something like SEL doesn't necessarily have to be a goal in a plan in order to have it happen or in order to increase the awareness. Again, for me, I'll go back to just simple culture pieces, which I think have been expressed from everyone. that with the increased awareness and the increase in common language, SEL will find its way into the schools, whether it's through curriculum pieces or areas along that line, or just even conversations at lunch tables. And that's an important piece. That's kind of the in the rough type of conversations that need to take place too.
Great, thank you very much, Tara. And I believe we've run out of time today. We're past 3 o'clock. But I wanted to leave everybody with our contact information for me and Chad, especially if you are interested in attaining the slides from this presentation. Please contact me and I can get you a PDF of those slides. And we'll be putting out the video, as I said, in the days ahead. I want to say a special thank you to Tara, Rochelle, and Audrey for their participation today, and to Chad for giving us some great information from Rennie. And we appreciate all of you attending this webinar today. We look forward to connecting with you further. And again, please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions or comments. Hope everybody has a great day. Thank you very much.